Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast on divine intervention. I'm pleased and proud and honored to say that I have Stephanie Kraft as my guest today. Stephanie is a profound healer and transformational guide in many different fields, which we're going to get into here shortly. But first, I want to say, Stephanie, welcome, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's my pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's an absolute honor. It is part of my mission, Stephanie, to share some deeper aspects of how healers like yourself have gotten to where you are today. And I just want to bring up and remind our friends, our collective, of the depth at which we need to go into our own healing process and soul to get to where we are in this moment, and also the continued work that we need to do on a daily basis to maintain this work. Would you agree with that?
Very much so. I think it's crucial that any healer have gone through their own deep personal healing journey and, having risen up on the other side in order to help people in a very deep, authentic way.
That's right. That phoenix rising. And sometimes it feels as though we've attained a certain place, but it turns out that we're just really in the beginning aspects of our journey. Isn't that right?
Yes, because it seems like there's a level and we think, oh, I'm done. And then we get to reach another level that we never even knew was there, but through hardship usually and through the healing journey.
That's right. I find now more than ever in this rise of people experiencing their own spiritual awakenings and profound catalytic experiences that it seems as though when they go through something very profound, they're really seemingly ready and willing to start to become a teacher and get everything out in the open. And I know that I was excited myself when I first went through my first spiritual awakening, but I'll tell you, years have passed now, and I've really come to realize that I was really nowhere ready to be offering what I was offering back then, and that the journey just continues to delayer and amplify, and you elevate and grow continuously.
Yes, it's ongoing.
I did have somebody say to me at one point, when you reach a level of enlightenment or a higher level of understanding, do you just stop there? And I had to just kind of giggle to myself. And I said to her, unfortunately, you're always doing the work. It never stops.
Right.
So, Stephanie, I just want to tell everybody here in the audience just some of the things that you're involved with now. And I'm going to leave Stephanie's website at the bottom of this interview so you can check out her beautiful offerings on your own. But just a few would be that you have an MS in health fitness management. You have a BA in Portuguese, which is amazing. You're an ordained minister. You're a hypnotherapist. You do hypnobirthing, hypnomothering, which is amazing. You're a life between life coach, a sound healer, theta healer, energy healer, Kundalini yoga teacher, and twin flame support guide. That's just a few. So I need to ask you, this is impressive. When did your journey into becoming a healer begin?
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and take you all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
And from the beginning of my life to really paint that picture.
That'd be great.
So I was born in Washington, D.C. in 1971. So I'm 47 now. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in DC with two parents, a brother and a sister, and something happened. And before I get into what happened, I just want to let the audience who's listening right now know that if you have children who are around you and can hear this, I would like you to press pause or stop and find another time when you're alone to watch this. Because what I'm going to tell you is not easy to hear. So when I was 10 years old, one of my friends was murdered. Mm-hmm. And the way that she was murdered was the worst part. So it's one thing to have a friend die, right, but what happened was her mother actually shot her.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So my friend was lying in her bed sleeping, and her mother came in and killed her. So then she tried to kill herself, commit suicide, but it didn't work. She's still alive. So when this happened, my entire world was shattered. Everything that I thought I knew to be true was no longer true. I grew up in a family that was not religious. It's not that they weren't religious. It's that my parents are both from Brooklyn, New York. They went to Catholic schools. They used to tell all these stories of how mean the nuns were. And I think they were very turned off. They did try to bring us to church when we were kids, but it didn't really work out very well. We weren't that into it, and I think they were not that into it. But they made an effort. It didn't get very far. We were toddlers and very young children by the time we stopped going. But there was enough exposure at the church that even at the very youngest age, something inside of me deeply said, all of this is false. None of this is true. And I thought that religion was mythology. I thought, why are people reading these stories out of a book that's fake? It's stories, it's fake, these are myths. And that was just an inner knowing. Not that it's right or wrong or true. That was just how I felt. So I didn't have religion, but I did believe in God. That was kind of just a given, an innate feeling or knowing. After my friend was killed, I remember walking home from school one day after this had happened. I remember exactly where I was and the exact moment that I said, I was trying to figure this out with my 10-year-old mind. I really went into deep thought about this, contemplating, very pensive, trying to figure out or understand how could this happen.
Sure.
And I told myself when I was walking home from school, if this can happen, then there is no God. So I said to myself, I'm stopping believing in God right now. And
profound information for a 10-year-old. These are things that most adults maybe don't even face. So for you to be having that, to develop that emotional intelligence at 10 is just really profound.
Thank you. I'm not sure it's emotional intelligence, but it was my coping mechanism. Whatever I could do to deal with it, to understand, to frame my new world around that. So I completely closed off. There is no God. This is the most horrific thing that could ever happen. And so I thought God was good. This is what I was telling myself. I thought God was good, but this happened. So there is no God.
Right.
I was having pretty severe PTSD at that time.
Understood.
Yes. I had been over at her house. I knew her parents. My mom had gone to school with her mom. And I was growing up in an abusive home. My mother was abusive. I didn't know that consciously, but it was happening. Emotional, verbal type abuse, not physical. And so the PTSD that I had was nobody knew that I had it, but it was manifesting in terror. I was one of the ways it manifested would be every single morning when I would be taking a shower. You know, if you've seen the movie Psycho, the mother rips open the shower curtain and starts stabbing her son. Well, in my world, in my PTSD, every day taking a shower, I would be terrified to close my eyes because back in those days, washing my hair, I kind of had to close my eyes because it would run forward. Now I'm an adult. I know I can tilt back and like kind of control the shampoo more than, but in those days, I kept having to close my eyes. And I was terrified to close my eyes in the shower. I mean, petrified because I thought she, the mom, was going to, not from the movie, but it was the scene from the movie, but I was replacing my friend's mom.
Wow.
My terrorizer. So I was fearing that she was going to open the shower curtain and start stabbing me. And then that was one part of my PTSD and nobody knew about it. And I didn't tell anybody. And the other part was every single night when I would go to sleep. I would go into terror, but I would close my eyes and these three beings would show up when I would close my eyes. And I know it sounds very weird, but they looked like ETs. And I was so afraid of them. And they came every night, and I would just will them away. I would will them away with my terror. I was petrified. And I would just think to myself, go away, go away, go away. I was just in so much fear.
Did you feel that they were malevolent beings, or?
At the time, I didn't know that there were good or bad or anything. I just saw these three, ET looking beings come into my inner vision, and I was scared.
Right.
And so I made them go, I willed them away, and I think they understood they can't keep coming because they're creating so much fear for me, and eventually they did go away. Now, a couple years ago, it did dawn on me that they were helpers and that they were coming to soothe me and comfort me. And what I realized profoundly was that I had shut off a potential awakening for myself.
Oh, wow.
I really truly believe that at that time, this trauma was an opening for me to really awaken, and that these beings would have been a part of that for me. And I completely shut it out. And I don't regret that, because it came back. Not they came back, but my awakening came later. So I truly believe that if we have a lifetime within our life contract, soul path, we have an agreement with ourselves that we're going to awaken. It will happen eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's interesting that you say that, because I'm wondering how many other people feel that same thing, where they had an opportunity to make a choice, whether it be go down this path of awakening or any other kind of choice, and really to have that reminder you just said, if something's meant to happen, it's going to happen.
Yeah, eventually.
Right.
And so mine only happened, 19 years later when I was 29. So from 10 to 29, I was an atheist or agnostic. I had completely shut out anything else. I thought, this world, this is all it is. There's nothing else. There is no God. I would laugh at people who believe in God. And I just thought it was ridiculous. I didn't believe in Jesus or Mary or any of that story. I thought that was a myth. So I lived, my life from 10 to 29 like that. Now we get to the year 2000 when I'm 29 years old, and my friend says, I'm living in Denver, Colorado, and a friend of mine said something about her psychic. And I said, you're a smart person. Why would you waste your money on that? I thought it was 100% fake. And she said, no, Stephanie, you have to listen to my tape. She gave me the tape recording to listen to, and I listened at home by myself. And what he said, this psychic man is very gifted, and what he said on that recording, there's no way he could have ever known those things about her.
Wow.
So I said, okay, I will make an appointment. So I made an appointment, and I was skeptical. I was not open, completely closed, and I didn't believe in anything. I said to him, I'm not going to say anything to you because this is new for me and I don't believe in anything. So I'm just going to let you talk.
Right. You're putting him under the test, right?
I was nice about it, but I'm sure he's used to that, and he understood where I was coming from. So he went ahead and read my heart and soul, unlike anybody could ever do. And he told me that I was a healer, a teacher and a healer, and that I would end up doing what I ended up doing. He said, what you end up doing is going to be coming from within you. You'll be remembering it. I didn't understand what he meant, but at the time I was looking into becoming an acupuncturist or a naturopathic doctor, or I was looking at getting a PhD in psychoneuroimmunology. So I was on my way back to school for either a PhD or a second master's. I was on my way to becoming a healer, but I didn't use those words because I hadn't been awakened that I was a healer, even though I was going down that path of study. So it's very interesting because I wasn't opened yet. Well, the day that he read my heart and soul, it touched me so profoundly that this was actually my spiritual awakening.
Wow.
I went home that night. I didn't sleep at all.
Mm-hmm.
I laid in bed, closing my eyes to try to sleep, and I was ecstatic the entire night. And when I would close my eyes, I would see the universe.
Wow.
I was seeing the universe all night through my closed eyes, the stars, the galaxies, and that's all I could see all night, because everything had just exploded so wide open for me, because I thought, if this man can know me so deeply, more than I know myself, but it resonated. It was like, yes, I know all of that, but when you tell me, it's like resonating. It's my heart. It is my soul.
Right.
And I thought, if someone can do that, then there is a God, or there's something. And I didn't have to use my mind at that point, because I was cracked open. The universe exploded open for me.
Yeah. So do you think that, and to share that story, coming from being an atheist for so long and that traumatic experience, to have this experience where you went in skeptical, and then after one conversation with this man, like he somehow gave you those codes to remembrance, and it happened immediately. Do you feel as though it was kind of like an ambush awakening where you were just immediately shifted?
Yes, it that big, yes. And I want to take one thing back. I wasn't thinking along the lines of God yet. I know I just said that word.
Right.
I wasn't there yet, but I was awakened.
You knew something profound just happened.
Something else.
And did you in that moment feel a little bit of uncertainty or fear in this opening, or were you immediately just the love was pouring in?
I was ecstatic. I was ecstatic the entire day.
All right. So tell me what happened after that.
So, this is where the story begins.
Okay, great. I'm ready.
Because once I had my spiritual awakening, I was continuing to have spiritual awakenings and deeply, profoundly, spiritually transformative experiences from that point on, ongoing. So,
do you think it's because your soul at that moment knew that you could handle it?
It was like, we've got her. It's the trajectory. It's on. We're on.
She's ready. Let's go.
Yes.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah. So I did quit my job, and I was planning to go to acupuncture school. I made my decision of what I was going to do. And I signed up for a summer intensive, anatomy and physiology class, because my graduate degree was already, about those sciences, but it was over 5 years old. So it was like expired. So I had to take this prerequisite for acupuncture school. So I was intensely studying. I had gone to come back. I was living in Denver. I had come back to DC for the school that I was going to go to is in Maryland. And it was, they had a weekend long prerequisite workshop type of thing that I had to go to. So I came back home, went to that. When I was there, it was another part of my awakening, because that was a spiritual place. So acupuncture is mind, body, spirit. I still was awakening, right? So it was a journey. Even though I woke up, to something, I was new. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know that was a spiritual awakening. You know what I mean? Right. Stuff was happening. So I was there, and it was like coming home so deeply, the way that they conducted these exercises with like different kinds of bonding and eye gazing and just different. I don't remember all the details, but the entire weekend, I was holding back tears. I just wanted to be crying and crying and crying. And I just held it back because I would have been embarrassed to cry. Although there were other people sobbing openly, I wasn't one of them to be comfortable doing that. But it was so much was welling up inside of me that was so profound, and it felt like coming home.
Stephanie, can you explain, because I've experienced that a couple times too, to the audience, the immense power in that feeling of being in alignment with your soul's destiny, that coming home? Can you just try to wrap your head around explaining that? Because there's no sensation better.
Well, if looking at my story, I had shut myself off, even
Yeah.
from myself to some degree, because
Mm-hmm.
who we are and what we are spiritual beings,
Right.
and we are connected to the oneness. Well,
Right.
if you cut yourself off from that and you say, no, there's nothing, there's just this. When after opening and then going to that place where it was the people were spiritual, the exercises were spiritual, the coming home was coming home to spirit, coming home to souls, coming home to life, coming home to what is real, and coming home to myself, because I am that
Yeah.
I had forgotten.
Yeah, like a fullness that you can barely even explain. Just home is really a nice word to explain it.
And I was home because I got off the airplane at National Airport in DC, and I was living in Denver, which is dry. And I came home and I got off the plane, and it was like this humidity wafting through the air, because it was April 2000, and there was this warmth and humidity that I hadn't had in Denver. And I grew up with that. So when I stepped off the plane, I said to myself, I have to come back. This is home.
Yeah.
So there were many levels of it.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? Something that happened to me similarly is when I had that feeling of coming home, it wasn't just a spiritual coming home. Just like you said, it was tangible and physical. It felt different externally too.
I will never forget that feeling physically when I felt that warm, humid air.
Mm-hmm.
And I smelled it. If anybody's ever been here, I mean, you can see it's green. It's very green in the DC area. It's very humid. But this wasn't a negative humidity.
Yeah.
But the other very profound thing was I was staying with my parents, and my father had really changed. He had really come to life. He was very different. He had a new zest for life. He was going to try all these new things, take cooking classes. He started Taekwondo. He had gained a lot of weight. He was had been a workaholic, emotionally unavailable. So I grew up with an abusive mother and a completely unavailable father. But I saw this different version of my father, and he was so excited about life. And there was this bonding energy that happened very subtly. Well, I went back to Denver and had a dream. At some point, after that, I had a dream. In my dream, I met with my father on the soul plane. So I met with my father's soul. In the dream, I expressed rage that is not even humanly possible. All of this rage just came pouring out of me, almost like a fire-breathing dragon. And I was telling him everything that he had done, that he had not done, that hurt me. You never gave affection. You never said, I love you. You never paid attention to me. You were not a father. You did nothing. You have given nothing to me. I just let it all out in such rage. I told him everything. His response at this pure soul level was absolute innocence. He had no idea. He didn't know that being a workaholic, he was a psychologist. He was totally dedicated to his patients. He loved his work. He was obsessed with it. He was very intellectual. That was his passion. He didn't realize that he was hurting his family by ignoring us and my mother.
So cerebral that you can't see through to the emotionality. Yeah.
Right. So he didn't know. And he stood there, his soul in my dream, like, I had shocked. I had no idea that I had that effect on you. He had no idea. He was totally innocent. He was totally shocked, and he was so sorry.
Wow.
And in that, my witnessing of his purity and his innocence, what happened was I had 100% forgiveness, and unconditional love for him.
Wow.
It was immediate, and what we had between us was pure unconditional love.
Wow, that's incredible. And you did this on the soul plane.
This was on the soul plane in a dream. It happened for real during my sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It was a spiritual experience. And when I woke up, I kept it. It was like, wow, I just have unconditional love and there's nothing to forgive.
You know what, Stephanie, I just want to pause you for a second, because I think that on the healer's journey, there's so many, I can't say how many, individuals who struggle with parental issues from their past, mother issues, father issues, severe trauma. And the fact that, and to remind the audience that some of this healing can actually be done on the soul plane and in the sleep plane is really profound, because I believe it can be very overwhelming for certain healers or individuals to contemplate, how do I do this on the 3D plane? How do I face this? But it's not always the case. It's not always that way.
Exactly. So I had a profound, complete healing with my father.
Wow.
Which did trickle down and was real in real life.
Right.
So a couple months later, my father was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer.
Oh, wow.
And he was given 8 to 10 months to live.
Wow, Stephanie.
I dropped everything. I finished my anatomy and physiology class. I got over 100 because it's like one of my strengths. And I was, I found out he was going to die right before the end of the class. And I was just focused on finishing this class. And I just gave away my stuff and furniture and as much as I could. And I packed the rest and I came home to DC. Mm-hmm. To take care of him. So I came home a year early. I was planning on staying in Denver one more year, but dropped it all and came back and I took care of him for 5 months. He passed away 5 months later. But what happened was that I could come home and take care of him with unconditional love. And he had the same for me. And we had the most incredible bonding, loving time during his death. So another part of my spiritual awakening was going through all of these experiences, that dream, that healing, taking care of him, watching someone die, being with someone every step of the way through their death. What was also happening to me was when I was still in Denver, I was having significant health issues. I was no longer able to show up at work on time. I know I said I quit my job for the class. That was an 8-week class. But prior to that, when I was working full time, I couldn't get out of bed. It was the hardest thing to do. I mean, really one of the hardest things to do was to get myself up and out of bed. I didn't understand what was going on. And then I would get to work an hour, hour and a half later. And then I would get home, let's say at 6 o'clock, I would get on the couch and sleep until 10. And I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So I had the couch in the living room and I would look at that bed in the bedroom and think for 4 hours, sleeping from 6 to 10, thinking, how am I going to get from the couch to the bed? I need
oh my goodness.
It was severe.
So you were having like overwhelming fatigue. Did you get checked? Did you have a diagnosis of something?
I started going to an acupuncturist. She put me on Chinese herbs. I had massive traumatic experiences during my monthly cycle 2 times in a row that I had to go to the ER. I thought I was going to die. Wow. I was in my uterus, I think, just contracted completely. I have had a baby, so I do know the worst pain in labor when you're at the very end, when your uterus contracts to begin the birthing process. And it's the most excruciating pain you could even never imagine. Well, this happened to me for 2 hours straight after when I took these herbs and I was in this acupuncturist. So I was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance and I thought I was going to die and my hair fell out. And after that, like even just after the pain went away, I was like taking a cab home and my whole body was shaking with from the physical trauma of the pain. So I was having major physical issues ongoing from that from that year 2000 ongoing until I got home to take care of my dad in September.
Stephanie, I want to ask you a question. There's some other people that are in the spiritual healing community that maybe some of our viewers have seen online. And I've heard multiple people whom I've trusted years ago explain this process of physical transformation and illness and almost a literal sensation of birthing something, carrying a child almost as if, or birthing a process. Looking back in hindsight, do you think that that divine kind of intervention was coming in to have you move you along somehow or birth something out of you?
Not that one, but it happened twice. But I didn't understand that what was happening. The pain, when I had that pain, I actually had a spiritual experience with it because it's a hard one to explain, but it was as if my soul was reaching to the other side.
Okay.
During it.
Wow.
I did think I might die because I remember thinking, I didn't know a human could experience this much pain.
I think that's profound information, because I think that many people have moments where you literally don't know if your physical body can handle such an experience.
Right. And when my soul was reaching to the other side, it was as if, again, it was like I felt female beings were also reaching for me at the same time. And it was just a moment of that. But I had to call 911, so I asked that psychic after that happened twice. I said, what was the meaning? By then I understood. I had gotten Louise Hay book, and I was starting to study. I was starting to read books. Okay. So it's starting when my awakening happened, the books came flooding in, the people would say things. And so all that started happening. So I said, what was it about? And he said, that happened. Actually, I didn't tell him about it. I went to see him again. He brought it up. He said, this thing happened to you. And I was like, how did he know this thing happened? He said what it was my needing to learn how to ask for help. And interestingly enough, after the first month it happened, I set up a team for the second month, not knowing, is this going to happen to me again the second month? It did happen. I had set up a network of people, and I told them, if I call you in the middle of the night, keep your phone on. These are the dates that I might call you, because again, it was my monthly cycle and I knew when it was coming. Well, I did learn. He said, you did learn to ask for help. Little did I know why, because later on I was going to need help.
Do you find, as if I've kind of experienced this with a lot of the healers in the community that I work with and see, is that the majority of them have a very difficult time asking for help, and we can be very severe recovering people pleasers.
It's still hard for me.
Yeah, still, and that's still something I work on myself too, but it's something I acknowledge. But on this journey, I believe that there are times we need help, but I also believe that in our asking for help and showing our vulnerability, we're teaching others how to do the same.
Completely.
Right.
And people want to help. So they get to fulfill that role because they want to help, and it feels good and fulfilling, and we're meant to help each other.
Right. So ask for help, everybody. Don't be afraid. We all need you.
It's true. And I did that time. I did then. And so I was having so many major health issues and seeking help. I was actually obsessed with my health, reading everything, constant, an obsession that was very detrimental to me, because I was trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And so I didn't know, but and the fatigue was severe. And when I got home to take care of my father, I became selfless. I completely forgot myself. I let go of any issues that I had, and I just took care of him 24/7. My mother was working full time. She was not helpful. She was, the other thing that I went through was very traumatic abuse by my mother toward my father while he was dying and toward me. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever lived through in my life, witnessing that and being amongst that. It was extremely severe abuse.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, that's the last thing that you think would happen when someone is dying. So not only was I witnessing my father dying and taking care of him, we were being subjected to
Abuse.
severe trauma. Yeah.
Right.
So I was having severe upper respiratory infections along the way, and to the point, where I'd have to sleep downstairs and not go near him for certain periods of time. These upper respiratory infections I felt like I was going to die. I was in so much pain. My lungs, my throat, my just extreme illnesses. I kept recurring illnesses. But most of the time I was able to take care of him. And so that going through death with someone he was embracing it. He was having a spiritual awakening during his process, reading the spiritual books, having the conversations with me. He was reading Conversations with God. He was doing his work. It was a beautiful death process. So I went through that with him, which was still the year 2000, still my ongoing massive spiritual awakening. So that was part of it too.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when he died, and I was with him, my whole family was with him, holding his hand, saying, "I love you," helping him cross to the other side, which was beautiful. When he died, the day of the funeral, I remember it was 7:30 p.m. and I had friends there, relatives, all, my house was full of people. And I was sitting in one of the rooms and I said to my friend, I have to go to bed right now. I couldn't control it. It was 7:30 p.m. I just left everyone. I went upstairs and I went to bed, and I didn't get out of bed for about 6 months.
Oh my goodness, Stephanie.
I had severe adrenal fatigue and a hypothyroid issue that went along with the adrenal fatigue. I didn't know this yet. I didn't know what was wrong with me. All I knew was that every breath I took felt like I was trying to stay alive. And it was that way the entire time I was bedridden.
Wow.
I will try not to make this story too long, but I found out through very synchronistic events about this doctor who specialized in it. I didn't know I had it, but long story short, through massive synchronicities, I found this doctor. There was a full page ad in this health spiritual kind of magazine, and it was huge. It wasn't just a regular size one. It was a big kind of magazine, and there were 52 symptoms. Do you have these? And I had all 52 of them. And so I went to this doctor who specializes in it. He treated me. He's natural, holistic, nothing artificial. So it was supplements, and I was having to measure my saliva and my temperature every hour. I mean, for months I was graphing my progress, and I was so sick. I was in bed, literally fighting for my life, still having the upper respiratory infections, wasting away, eating like massive amounts of food and not being able to hold on to any nutrition, and just getting thinner. I had nothing. I had given away everything to come take care of my dying father. I had no job, no money. I was putting everything on credit cards, all the doctor's bills, all my supplements. My supplements were like $400 a month. I was just trying to survive. My mother was, I was living at my house with my mother, and I was, like I said, in that bed, and every breath I took, I felt like I was trying to stay alive. So every moment I was brought into hyper-focused now moment. It was nothing There was nothing else. And my mother would come into my room every day and yell at me to go live on the street.
Oh my goodness.
Every day, go live on the street, yelling at me. So all I could do in that bed was use my will to live.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing. I didn't even have clothing that fit. I had one pair of pants that were, at the bottoms, it gets all the fringy frayed.
Yeah.
I had one pair of pants. They were too big for me and they were falling apart.
Yeah.
I had, and no, like I said, no money, credit card debt, nothing. I had that bed and my credit cards to get me the doctor and appointments and get me the supplements. I had lost everything. So, in that bed, God found me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I call it that. I say it that way. I say God found me.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't seeking. I didn't even know to seek. Yes, I had my spiritual awakening, but understand there are levels to it. And when you don't know things and things haven't opened up to you that way yet, you're still not there yet.
That's right.
That's what was God found me in that bed. Yep. And what I had in that bed was me and God.
Do you know what's so interesting is you and I have very different stories, but that moment I can 100% relate with. God found me living on a blow-up bed with nothing after closing businesses and sacrificing everything and going through my second kidney transplant, literally had nothing. And that's when that divine interaction happened for me. And same thing. He found me when I had nothing. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And I remember, I wrote in a journal, and I remember days when I would feel this ecstatic bliss of God having found me, and that connection to God, and my knowing that I have God and God has me, and in me is God. And yes, I was still practically dying, and still every breath I took was difficult, and I couldn't get out of that bed, but there was an inner ecstasy at times with that feeling and that God touching me.
Stephanie, let me ask you, because I've experienced this and I want your opinion. Looking back in hindsight for me at that moment, I can remember exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing. And in those moments, I look back and sometimes I wonder, was I on the other side? Was I very close to death in those moments? Even though I was very much in the physical and experiencing the trauma of the physical pain, I still had, like you said, those moments of bliss. And now I look back and I think, what a gift, because I think I experienced real true heaven on earth in those moments. But sometimes the dimensions get a little blurry, and I look back and I'm like, where really was I?
I think you were, so sick that you may have had that was your experience. I still felt here, but touched enough by God that I got to feel bliss.
That's amazing. And that feeling of bliss almost for me superseded the feeling of home a little bit. It was like bliss in home amplified.
Yeah, it gave me hope.
Yeah.
Perseverance. I had such a strong will to live, and it was my will that helped me live and survive and get out of that house when I could get out of the bed. I just remembered one more thing that happened back in Denver, but months prior. I was riding in the mountains on a bike with my brother, and it was up in one of the ski resorts in the summertime on a back road, and we were just riding our bikes along this smooth road, and there was a wind curve in front of us, and this motorcycle came very wide around the curve to the point where he was on our side, and he had time, but not enough time to veer over to his side. And there's something that I found out, that I learned about with motorcycle riding, that if your eyes are looking at something, your head follows and your body follows. And it's like something called like point fixation or something, but out of his sphere, because he saw himself coming head on toward me. He couldn't take his eyes off of me. He couldn't, he didn't have that time to like say with his mind, let me shift my focus and help my bike veer to the other side. He stayed fixated on me because he didn't want to hit me, but it's counterintuitive. But he came, I thought, of course he'll veer over to his side because he sees that we just stopped. We were standing both, stopped as far over on the side of the road as you could get, waiting for him to like pass us. But instead he kept coming closer and closer and more toward me, to the point where he came all the way to me. And instead of crashing into me, I would have died probably. He very quickly turned his wheel so that he would crash himself, to the point where he brushed my pedal. I could feel it that close. He touched my, so it was a head on, but he crashed himself to avoid killing me. And he crashed himself into a telephone pole, one of those big, huge wooden ones that hold the big wires on the highways, and it came up and out of the ground. He hit it that hard. I could hear his body thump against the pavement of the highway and roll. And he lived at that time. I don't know what happened later, but and he just kept repeating. He was lying on the ground and he kept repeating to himself, is she okay? Is she okay? And I would go over to him and look at him and say, I'm okay. And then go back to talk to the police. Well, anyway, it's a long story, but so this happened. And so it was almost like a near death. Well, I can't say near death experience because I didn't cross over, but these profound things kept happening leading up to my awakening, that on some level were supposed to stir me up to prepare me for my massive awakening.
Yeah. I think that's pretty accurate with a lot of people. If you have the wherewithal to see that, if you were to be shown everything all at once, could you handle it? And do certain people need these little micro events so you can handle the doozy?
And to look at life as precious. And
right.
it was to wake me up to life, yeah. So should I get into the aftermath after I started healing and became?
Yeah. So I think once you said you were going through your adrenal fatigue, what brought you out of that? And then where did you go from there?
Right. So I wasn't well yet, although well enough to get out of bed. So when I was living at my mother's house, I could get up to walk downstairs to the kitchen, but to eat. But then when I got there, I'd have to sit down on a chair to rest before I could open the refrigerator. So that when people, if people are wondering how did you eat or survive, I could walk and then sit and rest, open the refrigerator, get something out, sit and rest. So it was that type of being bedridden to the degree. But anyway, so the doctor said, in order to heal from adrenal fatigue, you have to have no stress. Meanwhile, when you have adrenal fatigue, your fight or flight is constantly high, and your heart rate, not everything's out of whack. And if people don't know what adrenal fatigue is, basically when your adrenal glands produce so much adrenaline from stress, they burn out. And because it's the endocrine system, and one part of the endocrine system fails, then it takes all of the other systems down, which is why I had no immune system, couldn't assimilate nutrition, losing all the weight, the fatigue, the heart rate. 1 second.
Sure.
I think I'm going to cough.
Okay, that's okay. And adrenal fatigue, I think, is something that a lot of healers go through. And it's something that they don't find until later on. They wonder why all of this fatigue and chronic illness. It's all of the giving, and the alignment needs to change, right?
1 second.
Yeah, no, take your time. Yeah, we understand this. Better to get it out now. talking about these issues can really stir up a lot of issues, a lot of emotions.
Yeah,
Getting it out.
it's not really that, I don't
Mhm.
think. It was more like, when you get a dry spot when you're talking a lot.
Yeah, I get that.
Hopefully the water will help.
Yeah, I wish I could hand you a cough drop through the computer, but we're not quite there yet.
Right.
Maybe soon, but
one day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Don't apologize. We all understand.
Yeah, so I could one more sip.
Yeah.
When I could get out of my mother's house, I moved out, and I didn't tell her where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
I was escaping abuse, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get another glass of water.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. I'm just going to say something really quick about what Stephanie's talking about is, I myself have experienced living at the hands of an abusive situation in a home life, particularly with what she's talking about and with my mother. And it's so interesting as healers how a lot of times some of our biggest lessons and some of our biggest breakthroughs and challenges come from right within the home. And I know you guys can understand that as well. And, really discovering what you need in those very private, personal moments when it's right in your face is really important. And for some of us, we need to, move, get away from the energy until we can have a better way of coping with it. But it is very common, I believe, to have the trauma right in front of you very often as a parental figure. So.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very common. It is.
Yeah, it is. And, I've experienced that too. And, I'm glad that you had, sometimes it seems as though for me, I've been forced back into that living situation, because out of the desperation of my own personal experience. But then it's kind of like I'm at war, like the enemy's right in front of me. And, how am I going to get away when I can't? Because I don't have the wherewithal or the money or the finances or the means to escape it, And I've done a lot of my healing in those moments where I wanted to escape, but then there's times where you do literally just need to move on then.
Right.
So I'm glad that you had the opportunity to get out when you could. And so tell us, if you can, what happened when you got out? What did you do?
Well, I got a job. The only way I could get out was to get a job.
Right.
And I wasn't really ready, but I had to. So for my survival, to get away from my mother, so that I could continue on my healing journey, because I needed to be out of a stressful situation.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, I had to get a job and, rent. I rented a room in a house with other young people like myself. I was 29 at the time. And I was working at this place in DC. It was pretty good job. But anyway, so that was the year. So it was 2001.
All of that in 1 year. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, a lot happened in the year 2000. My father died in December 2000. So 2001 came along. I got out of that bed, got a job, moved away, was still coming home from work and sleeping, and then sleeping the entire weekend in my recovery. It took me many years to heal from adrenal fatigue.
Wow.
I ended up getting married in 2003, and I had a 2002, I think it was 2002, but we had a baby in 2005, or maybe I got married in 2003. But anyway, I started my Reiki training in 2001. That was part of my healing journey. So interestingly enough, my father, when he was dying, he asked my sister for Reiki every day when she was there. She came to take care of him too for part of the time. So Reiki was something I had been introduced to in 1997, but I wasn't spiritually awake yet. So I experienced it at a health fair. Somebody just put her hands on my shoulders, and I felt this warmth that was not humanly possible. And I said, where's the thermos or the radiator where you were heating up your hands? Because I don't see anything. Where did you heat up your hands? I was totally innocent about it. And she said, it's universal life force entering through me and out my hands. And I thought that she was speaking a different language, which I didn't understand. And so I took Reiki, put it in my back pocket for when I was ready. I knew I was going to learn it, though. Something inside of me. And then that psychic said, you're a healer. And then I was, so I was going to do it one day. And then my sister came and helped with my father, and she was doing Reiki on his feet. He would always ask, can you Reiki my feet, please? Every day. It was very sweet. And I was like, I know about that, and I'm going to learn that. So 2001 came along, got out of that house, and I took my Reiki training, and I found out that I was really a healer.
Yeah.
It was profound. So I opened up my healing practice in 2002. Became a Reiki master teacher. Taught Reiki for 14 years, but did not do Reiki the whole time. So what happened was, in 2006, I had another massive spiritual shift in that people, well, it was a walk-in experience. So people call a walk-in when one kind of walk-in is when the soul is like, I'm done here. I can't take it anymore. I want to leave. They're contemplating suicide. They may attempt suicide. They get an illness. Something happens, or that soul is going to leave that body. And on the soul, on the other side, that soul has made an agreement with another soul to come and inhabit that body to continue that life. Many times a walk-in experience is not that kind, but it's the kind where another aspect of your own soul comes in to embody. And it's new because it has not been in this body yet in this lifetime. It can be thought of as embodying more of your higher self, but a big aspect of it because of the level of change that happens.
Right.
This happened to me in 2006. When this happened, everything changed. I was looking out my eyes with I was looking through my eyes with new eyes. I was seeing the world.
Can I ask you, did you consciously know what was happening at the time? Like, what were you feeling when you started to notice that you were seeing from a new perspective?
I was noticing just that. I was literally walking around the world looking with new eyes, and I knew it. I didn't know what a walk-in was, I don't think. No, or I don't know if I did or it didn't, but I was looking around at the humans and I was calling them humans, whereas I hadn't done that before, but because I wasn't human or because this new aspect was so profoundly new and different that I was removed from humanity until I integrated it more. So there was a period of integration.
Right.
When this happened, and I was just looking at all the humans, I was observing this world. It was very interesting. All these books came into my life that were about other star systems. Basically, this was my starseed awakening.
Right.
And it was so profound.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was like that in a new world suddenly my friend invited me to some big, huge spiritual group, and everybody there was like from another star system, and I was from one too. And I knew, and it was real and true.
Yeah.
So from that, so I could talk for 10 hours, which I won't do, but from 2001 and starting to learn Reiki, and all the years from 2001 up to 2006, I was still having major spiritually transformative experiences that, I could write books on, but for the sake of time, I just fast forwarded to 2006. So I'd already been on this journey, devouring books. But what happened in 2006 was of a different nature.
Like a literal different dimension.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Do you think that it is just a process of uncovering what you can handle? I mean, if you were, younger or earlier on your awakening journey, for you to be in contact with maybe your galactic roots and different dimensions, again, I think it's good for people to know that wherever they're at is good, because sometimes I see people want to say, well, what galaxy am I from, or what star seed am I? But they're not quite maybe at the level of consciousness to be able to really handle that, because when it does come along, your cookies are going to get blown a little bit. So you have to really appreciate where you're at. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would agree with that, because all of a sudden then I wanted to divorce my husband.
That's right. So see, when you or I should say spiritually shift, your physical is going to shift too.
My whole world changed. My inner world changed. And then my outer world needed to change to match up with the new being that I was.
You know what? That phrase, as within, so without, isn't just a catchy phrase. Like, I want people to really understand the magnitude of the shifts that occur. It's a reflection. The inside and your outside is going to change too. So,
and I feel sorry for my ex-husband, because I didn't have an explanation that I could verbalize, because I was going through this shift, and I knew it was I was different and we were no longer resonating, but he couldn't understand anything that was going on within me. So it was like the disillusion of a marriage for no reason, probably from his side of things.
Yeah. Stephanie, I think we could probably have a whole nother show on that, because I went through the same thing with the dissolution of my marriage over major spiritual awakenings. And I actually did try to explain it, but because I wasn't integrated and didn't have the knowledge and wherewithal to really verbalize what was happening, I'm pretty sure that my husband thought that I lost my marbles, because I was trying to say, I actually said, I'm growing wings out of my back and I'm seeing this and color. And I'm pretty sure that I maybe could have approached it differently, but for me, that's how it came out. But again, sometimes things just shift. And I think so many people have been through this, where they're in something that feels really in alignment. And then when they go through this, it just completely dissolves. And for my husband too, we had what would be classified as a pretty good marriage. And people were very confused when I decided to leave my marriage. And, really nobody believed me, because I didn't have the right explanation. So, and in the three-dimensional world, so many people would say, well, there must have been something going on that we didn't know about. And I said, really, there wasn't. Everything was good. I changed.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So how did your husband take it then when you did decide to separate?
Not well.
Mm-hmm.
It took 3 years. He didn't. I asked in 2006, and he didn't want to get divorced until we did in 2009. So it took 3 years to get him there.
Right.
I didn't push it too hard, because my son was 1 in 2006 and 4 in 2009. So we ended up getting divorced when my son was 4, which was a better age for everybody,
Stephanie, for you to follow your heart in this journey, in a perceivably decent marriage, good marriage, and you have a very small child, I mean, that's very brave and commendable of you to really choose to follow your path.
Making that decision, it did take me 3 years too. It was a very hard decision to make. Mm-hmm. And, but I did, yes, I followed my heart, and it was very brave, because I was very scared.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think I want to, mention to our audience too, is that when you're given a calling, it doesn't always make logical sense yet. And, for me, I had that profound moment where God showed me two roads, and he said, you can stay here and live this life that's going pretty well and own yoga studios and be with your husband and have your friends, or you can follow this path where, unfortunately, I can't show you anywhere that it's going. It's just a black path. And I knew in my heart and soul that that's where I should go. But I had so much fear. You go through the emotions of what is everybody going to think, and how am I going to do this, and how am I going to survive? And you start doubting that heart call. And, for me, I just want to share this real quick is, I went into my car, and this was the day before I told my husband that I wanted a separation because of the spiritual awakening that I had. And I knew it was going to lead me down a path that was going to pull me away from being a good wife. And I went into my car and I just prayed out to God. I said, why did you show me this? Where am I going? What should I do? How am I going to do this? And he showed me the roads. And then I said, well, if I take that road, that dark road, I don't know where it's going. What's going to happen to me? Am I going to be okay? And I heard God's voice, and he said, who are you? And of course, I went through all the labels to start. I'm a wife. I'm a business owner. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a daughter. I'm a this. I'm a that. All the labels. And God kind of aggressively kept saying, no, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And finally, I got down to the grit. And in my yoga school that I had, I said, well, I'm a person who tells people to follow their heart. I'm a person who tells people to trust their intuition. I'm a person who tells people to take the unexpected path. And as I'm talking and talking and talking, I'm like, oh, shoot. And that hit me. I said, you know what? If I don't take this unknown path and go up there and tell my husband right now and go on this journey, I'm a fraud. And I just did it, but I had no idea. And honestly, to this day, I'm still being led. But to do that, you really have to sit with yourself, and you have to be very brave to do that.
I did. You're right. It took me 3 years of contemplation. And then when it happened, when he's finally said, okay, fine, let's get a divorce. He had to come to that place where he said, okay, let's do it. We put the house on the market for rent, and I was home. Somebody rented it, and within 2 weeks, I was homeless. I had no job, no money, and I was a single mother. Wow. And I had to move out, and I had nowhere to go. And that's brave, because I was following my heart. Nothing had happened in the marriage that would logically put a single mother out on the street. That sounds like leaving an abusive situation or something happened. It wasn't like that. It was like what you're saying. It was this profound soul calling that I had to follow. And I had to send out an email to friends and say, I am homeless. And somebody did put me up in their basement with my son for 6 weeks. And what happened was, there was no time limit put on it. But what happened was, as soon as I made that decision, I got this amazing job. I had just applied for it. And I was bombarded with clients. And so not only had I been building up my healing practice, healing, hypnotherapy on the side, I had and I was bombarded with those clients. I had a job. And so what became my stress of, I'm homeless, I have no money, I don't know what I'm going to do. It became, I have to manage all my time and find a caregiver for my son. It became managing my life, which was a good blessing and a good stress, but it was so the universe swept in, lifted me up, supported me. I moved out of that basement in 6 weeks because I had enough money, and I found a place to live.
Everybody, please listen to that. Following your heart's not easy, but I do really believe that in the right timing and with the right skills that you accumulate by following your heart and your calling, that the universe will turn around and it will pay off for you in many ways.
Luckily for me, I had a spiritual teacher. Now, I've never really looked up to having a guru or a teacher, but she was in that role of leadership, and I was going to this group. So she said, I was, for 3 years, like, what do I do? What do I do? Do I leave him? Do I leave? And one day she said to me, Stephanie, what you're going to do is you have to jump off the cliff and the universe will support you. She said those words, and that is exactly what happened.
Doesn't sound real appealing, does it?
You can't know ahead of time if it's really going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen. Even the day that I was, I was homeless for a period of time. Not that I didn't have a place to stay, but we knew that the house was rented and I knew I didn't have a place to live, and I had no job and no money. So those circumstances were there. And yes, I was supported.
Right. That's incredible. So after that, you started your healing business, really?
Yes. And so I had started my healing business in 2002, and I was doing it on the side while I was working. And then I had my son in 2005. And so I was only working very little bit because I was taking care of him. So, but then anyway, so in 2009, he was 4, so I could work a lot more. Well, what ended up happening also is that I would wake up in the morning with this energy pulsating through my whole body, pulsing through, and it would be going on every morning, and I would just let it ride itself out until it stopped. It was very significant. And this went on for a very long time, months or years even. And one day I took so many healing classes, and one day I was going to a new healing class and new modality. And that night I had a dream, which wasn't actually a dream. I had a spiritual experience on the other side with these beings.
The same beings from before? Different?
These felt male.
Okay.
The other ones felt female. And they were instructing me. They were definitely not human, but they had a silhouette of a human body up, it was lit up, and they were teaching me healing. They were teaching me healing and showing me points of light on the human body and what to do. And I was given a healing gift that was, I don't know, amazing. And I woke up in the morning remembering what I'm telling you now, but not remembering the details, right? So, but not all the details of what they were teaching me. But of course it was.
You were downloaded.
Right.
Right.
And I woke up with this knowing that I had this healing modality. Well, interestingly enough, people had told me in the past, psychics, that woman I mentioned, they would just say to me, Stephanie, you're bringing in a new healing technology. And I was thinking, well, I guess that what they mean is one day in my life, I'm going to be like, Dolores Cannon, or one of these people, Eric, the Reconnection, these people who bring into the world a healing modality, or that they've conjured up something and invented something. I thought it was coming from my mind that I was going to create something. But when I woke up with that healing, that gift that morning, I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. I'm bringing in a new healing modality. They called it healing modality, healing technology, that's coming from within me. And that's the healing that I do. I don't need to create anything or teach. I can't teach it. It just comes through me. And so all those years of this energy pulsating into me every morning, it was happening while I was sleeping, and I would wake up with it and until it ran its course. And it would also happen every day, just sitting down at my computer. Anytime I would sit in a chair and be still, I would start feeling it pulsing through me.
Wow.
So this was being, I was, I guess, integrating this and downloading this and assimilating this for many years. And so after the dream was when I knew I had it.
Right.
And then,
what's so interesting is you describing this is how you were saying you thought it would be some sort of manifested logical presentation that you would be, like you said, coming through mentally, but really your technique was coming through from within, right?
That's right.
And it's interesting because how the divine works and how God works and how God is using us, light workers, healers, whatever you want to label us as, is all different and unique. I had dreamtime experiences where I was being downloaded with information. I was in a schoolroom. Like very often I would be in a college-like setting where I would be in a classroom, right? And I'm in the classroom and I have a very strict, big, masculine professor, and he's a little angry at me because I've fallen behind on my studies a little bit. And he would really kind of aggressively, like, Stephanie, learn this. And it was kind of like this coding was coming in. But for me, what's interesting is how I'm presenting that into the world is different. Like for me, I am more externalizing it than coming from within in my particular circumstance with medicine. So it's just so interesting how the divine is really individually giving us what we need for what we're here to do. And it's kind of different for everybody.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I woke up that morning in 2009, I knew, oh, I have the healing gift. This is it. Yes, I had, been attuned to Reiki and I was doing Reiki, but I stopped doing it because when I did a test, I would turn on Reiki, put my hands on someone and feel a certain amount of energy. Mm-hmm. Then I would just not do that. And I would just just do nothing but put my hands on someone and not turn anything on. That energy would flow through me and it felt 1,000 times stronger.
Yes. And that's, I think, what's accessible for particular people who are on a specific journey is, I actually wrote an article a while ago and I said why Reiki no longer resonates with me. And of course, I stirred up a little bit of aggravation with my spiritual friends, but really I was trying to explain what I was embodying, which was similar to you, is that all of a sudden I didn't need an external modality or someone else's technique. I had my own.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And it's through our soul. It's our soul. It's not as if these beings downloaded, maybe they did, but this is my soul. My soul is the healer. And I know that because when someone books a session with me, mm-hmm. they receive a healing. I don't know about it, but they tell me about it. And it happens all the time. Yeah. The other thing that they tell me is I show up in their dreams healing them. Mm-hmm. And this is before I ever know who they are or meet them. Mm-hmm. So because my clients book online mm-hmm. and I'm not aware yet of who I'm going to be meeting, but their healing begins when they book because my soul is the healer.
Yeah, you know what? Similar thing happened to me is that when I started working with clients, again, I didn't realize this in the beginning because there's a process of integrating until you say, oh, that's what's happening to me, right? So people, who are listening, just be aware of that. You might not know exactly what's happening, but you will eventually know what's happening. And what would happen with me, I guess because of, the empath nature or my particular healing modality would be I would actually take on certain emotions and psychological characteristics of that person, usually the morning of the session. So I would actually, and I would be alone most of the time where people might think I was crazy, but I actually was kind of feeling within me and living out an aspect. And then I would find out later as they would talk to me, I'm like, oh, that's why I was experiencing that feeling or sensation because I had to feel it before I tapped into them.
Stephanie, I could have said the exact same words.
Yeah.
I do that almost every day with clients. The
right.
Same thing you just said. Yes.
And it's brilliant that we can have this conversation and relate to each other in that way because these are very different, whether they're new, whether they're ancient. I can't exactly say, but it's powerful and it's divine.
Yes, because we are transmuting mm-hmm. their energy for them.
Right.
Healer, we've taken on that role for this lifetime and many lifetimes. And we're not the victim. We are not, putting ourselves on a pedestal. It is not easy to do what we do. We suffer with it because of the energies that we transmute through our bodies. And I'm honored to do it. Mm-hmm. Glad I can help people. I want to be in service. I am in service. So I'm also not complaining, but it just is what it is, and it happens profoundly, and we know it happens because of how you described it.
And Stephanie, the one thing I do want to say is, I have within me, it's very important to be humble with what I do. And that's actually limited me. And I've had to do a lot of healing work around coming out as my true self, because I'm afraid that people might think that I'm putting myself on a different level or on a hierarchy, and I'm not. But what I will say is this, and I've mentioned this too before to people, and I'm sure you can relate. I tell people my life is slightly different. It's not better than anybody else's, but I will tell them that I eat, breathe, and sleep my work and my clients. I don't do normal things. I have to actually push myself and nudge myself at times to do something that maybe the rest of humanity thinks is normal and fun. Like for me, I have to sit and watch a Netflix sitcom or movie. It's very rare that I do this because I'm constantly educating and learning and healing myself and going through more things, that it isn't a life for everybody. I will say that. So I don't say I'm special. I know that God gave me a gift, but day in and day out, I'm dedicated to this work. And, if anybody thinks that we live lives that are sitting back and helping people in tons of pleasure and luxury, this field is not for you.
Yeah, I could have, again, said every single word you just said.
Mm-hmm,
Ditto.
mm-hmm. Stephanie, I have to ask you really quick. I'm going to kind of shift trajectory here for a second. Can you just offer up a couple of the things that you do to maintain your own self-care in this journey? Because it will take you down, and it has me, if you don't really self-care. Can you give a little advice to the audience watching about that?
Yes, and I had to learn that because stress almost killed me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am, a great spokesperson for managing your stress. You cannot let stress get to you. So there's so much I could say, but really working with your mind to reframe things and get to the higher perspective, get to the spiritual lessons, because if you get stuck in confusion and mental stress, you're going to fatigue your body and get sick. So I think, I'm in a meditative state so much of the time because of my work. So meditation, walking in nature, taking a salt bath. I mean, literally salt will clear your energy and ground you. So it's not just a woo-woo thing. It's actually really energetic and physical, where, you're going to clear your energy. Being in water, listening to music that you like, taking that time out and away from people, especially if you're an empath and if you're a highly sensitive person, really don't feel obliged to be part of the world as much as you think you might need to. That's what I do. I'm very isolating because of this, because of how sensitive I am, because of the work that I do, and my energy. I need my energy. So yoga is a huge one. I do all of these things. So I'm not just mentioning things out there. What I do is all of this. And so floating is another one that people, flotation therapy, if you don't know what it is, look it up, find a place in your area, try it out. It's not everybody likes it, but it's excellent. It's one of the top things for relaxation, and it's therapeutic and healing. So my favorite kind of yoga is Bikram. It's hot yoga. And
that'll move some energy through pretty quickly.
Yes. So eating, your diet is very important. A clean diet. Get rid of the toxins. Get rid of all the chemicals in all products, deodorant, hair, shampoo, body, house, as much as you can, because it's going to really affect your energy and your health. So in all ways, you're trying to clean up and be clean and raise your vibration, and how you do that. Even if you want to go a step further, start incorporating essential oils. I'm not saying ingesting them, but just using them, because these are very high vibrational substances. Get energy healing. If you are a healer, if you're a sensitive person, empathic person, you need to get help. you're not meant to do everything on your own. Seek out a healer that you can get support from, get energy healing. And I do that too. And massage is a huge one.
Yeah.
I get regular massages. Craniosacral therapy is very good too. So I know you said just a couple, and I just listed probably 10 or 15, but they're all really good.
Yeah, you did. You named a lot of wonderful modalities. And one thing that I've fallen, victim to myself is, again, this deep desire to constantly work, that I do neglect my own self-care. And what I'll say to the audience, and I'm sure you'd agree, is schedule this in, because you're probably going to have the tendency to be like, I'm okay, I'm going to keep working. Right? And if you don't schedule it in, you will pay for it. In my belief, you're now on mission. You're now on God's mission. And if you fall to the wayside, again, for me, because things show up for me so physically as so far as manifesting illness, I know what the consequences are if I don't follow my mission.
Exactly. And the other one thing is having friends, people to talk to, finding people who resonate with you, having somebody, because, don't isolate to the point where you're alone. I have plenty of friends and people. I have my whole life, and I have since I had, especially starting in 2006 with that new the walk-in experience, my whole world opened up with a new social life, meaning soul family.
Yeah.
So try to find those people that are like-minded. That's a huge step.
It is. And, require a lot of isolation myself. And I know what you're saying about the soul family. One thing that's helped me, and this may or may not be for everybody, but I am involved with people who maybe other people wouldn't associate as being on the spiritual awakening path, whatever you want to call those people, who aren't really interested in this lifetime, maybe when doing this type of work, and that's okay. But I mean, right now, I'm actually living back home at my mother's house because of decisions that I made. So I'm back in an environment where I know my mother has not chosen at this time to be where I am. So what I do is, a lot of times I try to use comedy, and I try to be like ridiculous and say things so she can appreciate and honor my choices, but in a more comedic way. So very often, the diet she wants might not be conducive for me. She does have particular habits that are not good for me to be around, and I kind of make a joke and I say, Mom, you got to be careful. I got an angel body here. We got to be light. We got to be healthy. Like, I kind of try to approach someone who may not have the level of understanding with a little bit of comedy, because that kind of helps me not get sucked in from that energy.
So good.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting but we do have to deal with, the 3 dimension and the 3rd dimension. That's a part of our journey. And as much as we may be attuned to different spiritual modalities, and, that's my favorite place to live is up there. It's taken me quite a lot of learning and understanding to learn how to navigate being on Earth doing this work. And if I'm not on Earth and I'm not grounded and have my sense of humor and interact with individuals, then why am I here?
Yep. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So Stephanie, do you want to discuss anything else about your journey coming into this profound healer that you are?
There's one more story that feels like it wants to be told.
Please do.
It's never been told publicly before. And the reason that I feel it for the first time wanting to come out is that if I tell this story, I think that it gives other people permission to share similar types of experiences that maybe many of us are keeping private.
Yes, please.
Yes, and if we share these things, we get to open up more to all that we are and our oneness and the magic and the beauty of life.
Yeah.
And so when I told you about my upbringing, and I believed that everything was mythology and I didn't believe in any religion, I still don't ascribe to religion. And but one thing led to another, and some profound things happened where I started to believe in Jesus. And that is because Jesus came to me. and which was unexpected because I still didn't believe in him, but he decided to start connecting. So one of the things that happened to me in approximately 2006 or 2007 was that Jesus embodied inside of me for 2 weeks. So
explain what you mean.
Yeah, so we would say his spirit came and lived inside of my body to the point where I knew it and I could feel it, and his words were going through my mind all the time. Now, I didn't read the Bible and did not know his teachings very well. Of course, we've all heard, even if you're in my type of situation, you still have heard some of the words.
Right.
His teachings and his words were constantly running through my mind. And I was radiating his light, his love, his compassion. Not that I think that it was visible to other people. I don't think so, but it was such a profound feeling for me that I would go into the bathroom and look in the mirror just to check. I could feel it, but I wanted to look in the mirror to see if he was still there and look into my eyes. So I would go into the bathroom to look in the mirror and see, yeah, he's still there, because the radiance out of his light was radiating out of my eyes. He was in me, and I was walking around this world as him, embodied as him, literally for 2 weeks. And that's not something that people would normally share, because
just by the sheer way it sounds. Yeah. Right.
And what was happening, I had asked that same spiritual lady that I talked about before, what was that about? And she said that, he was coming in to help my body acclimate that vibration to that. If I'm a healer, why not cause my frequency to be in attunement with that? So it was kind of like that, attuning me. And not that I will not go on, but I had multiple other profound Jesus experiences that I think one day definitely put out in a video on my YouTube channel, because again, I think that when people share, there's probably an energy transmission that happens with that, and there's an opening which allows other people to say, oh, hey, me too, this thing happened to me. And then we just get to share our stories, because it's a gift. He's a being of light who came to teach and to give us gifts. And so if we get to embody that and pass that around, then it's the whole reason for his being.
Yeah. I have to say, I honor that you said that. And I too have had experiences now where I'm finding myself going back into the Bible. I'll listen to different, books of the Bible at night when I'm going to sleep. And I have this renewed sense of connection with God, with Jesus, with the Bible, because I grew up in a very kind of ritualistic, abusive Christian household. So that's really what led me to find yoga. I really got very actively involved in the New Age community for a very long time, because that's where I felt the unconditional love coming from, because I didn't feel it in this God that was the God that you maybe attributed the death of your friend to. And what happened now is I feel like I'm coming more full circle and realizing what I needed to get out of the New Age community. And I'm kind of going back into this connection with God and with Jesus, and kind of not necessarily needing to do some of the particular things I was doing in the past. It's just this new development and connection with Jesus myself too. And it is a little unusual for maybe us in the spiritual community to be talking about this. And, this is very controversial and we don't need to go into this, but I have watched several videos with Doreen Virtue, and I'm sure that you've seen what's going on with her and what's happened with her. And she's done a real pole shift where she's now completely, has put aside her work in the past. And I'm not saying that I'm anywhere where Doreen is or can compare myself, but what I will say is this, is I do think that there needs to be this merger and this more acceptance of the spiritual light worker community with the Bible, with the God, and be more open and not so injured by the Jesus maybe they were taught or grew up with. I do think there needs to be this merge of, hey, let's go back into the Bible because it's actually really profound and there's a lot of amazing information in there.
Yes, and from my perspective and my personal situation with it is I don't associate Jesus with religion because he came here to teach people to turn away from religion.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. So if we can come to the truth of his words, and separate him from Christianity, that's a whole nother conversation, but that's where I come from. That's where I live and within myself. And so I have no religion. And yes, there are some beautiful things to read in the Bible. And I believe in his teachings completely.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I wouldn't be someone like Doreen Virtue because I don't, religion in this lifetime for me is non-existent.
Right.
But I can see who Jesus is.
And that's really the thing, though, isn't it? Is do we need to label it to be connected with the Bible, God, or Jesus? Do we need to label it as religion? That's where all the distortion really started to occur. So we're not saying as light workers or healers or spiritualists that we denounce God and the Bible and Jesus. It's the organized fashion of religion and the people really behind it that's led us down to, I think, where we are today.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, and but I have come to know a new Jesus and a new God than the one I was brought up with. Let's just say that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
And so many people have made that transformation that you've gone through, and some people cannot get past the fear and the guilt and the pain of having been brought up with that religion, and they don't get to where you are. So you're a beautiful example of that transition that can be made.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be ashamed to talk about it, because I do feel that there's this schism between the New Age and maybe Christianity, but really those are both just labels that maybe are no longer needed, and we need to kind of merge the two together. It's kind of like, the world of logic and the world of spirit, and, science and spirit and logic and heart, and it's kind of like merging all this together rather than being one or the other. That's all separation consciousness anyway.
Yes, beautiful.
Right?
Yes.
One thing I want to recommend to you, maybe to look into if you haven't yet, that's been interesting for me to discover, is the works of Emanuel Swedenborg. Do you know who that is?
No.
Please look him up, because he actually was a scientist in the 1700s and profound inventor, and all about science and logic and the left brain. And he had a profound spiritual experience in his late 50s, which led him to write numerous volumes of material that's based on his newfound relationship with God and Jesus, but also incorporating the mystical aspects of it too. So when I started finding out about Emanuel Swedenborg, I was like, oh my gosh, this work it's God and spirit. It's the mystical and the physical. And for me, I just really find his works fascinating. One work is called Divine Providence that I really like, a book that he wrote. Now, there's another book he wrote called, I think it's called The Divine Sacred Marriage, Divine Marriage, Conjugal Marriage. And in this writing of this book, it really describes, I believe, what we as light workers or non-light workers are experiencing as the twin flame union, the twin flame journey. So that was one thing I was really drawn to. I thought, oh my gosh, this guy back in the 1700s is kind of explaining the potential of a twin flame and like the purpose behind it. So maybe check him out. It's kind of interesting.
I will. Thank you for that. And I will mention a book to you and to everybody listening, because it's profound and important. It's my favorite book. It's called Anna, Grandmother of Jesus.
Okay.
By Claire Hartsong.
Okay.
Claire channeled Anna,
Mm-hmm.
and the entire book is the entire story of that family and Jesus, and it will shed a new light on the truth. I believe the truth of the entire story. And it's way more galactic and cosmic and spiritual than you can imagine. And it will, if anybody has trouble with religion or the kind of upbringing you explained with growing up with the church or growing up with no religion, if it's just it's a complete journey into that story, and it changed my life.
Wow, I'm going to check it out. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
No, that feels like everything for today.
That was a really wonderful journey into who you are, really profound, some of the things that you've endured to become who you are. And I just hope that you're continuously blessed to do all this wonderful work in the world, because you're very needed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a privilege. And everybody, I will have Stephanie's information at the bottom of this podcast, and please reach out to her if you feel like you need any assistance or guidance. And I think for today, Stephanie, I'll say thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was such a pleasure for everybody, I'm sure, watching, and also for me, because again, to have that reassurance and relatability with somebody else is comforting, to know that you're not alone.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye-bye.